Hey, this is Steve Welliver, and I am back with Deprogramming Lesson 3, Diversity. Diversity, or raznoobrazia in the Russian language, has a very specific meaning to Bolsheviks, and that is the same definition as has been used in the United States in recent years. Diversity is the Leninist principle of diversity, which means unity of socialist content through diversity of form. This was regarded as the most surefire route to installing communism, and the tragic history of the first socialist state, the USSR, exemplifies the success of using diversity. Joseph Stalin, at the 10th Party Congress in 1921, said, quote, "Embrace all the diversity as regards manner of life, culture, and economic conditions of the various nations and nationalities." Russian history professor Yuri Slezkine in 1994 wrote, "The great transformation of 1928 to 1932 turned into the most extravagant celebration of ethnic diversity that any state had ever financed." And after 1933, Harvard Russian history professor Terry Martin wrote in his 2001 book, The Affirmative Action Empire, that, quote, "a massive state-sponsored academic apparatus was being established for the sole purpose of celebrating and promoting ethnic diversity." So notice two of those words associated with the Stalin era, with diversity. Embrace, celebrate. You hear those all the time here in America, especially in the K-12 system. So diversity, the project of minority socialist construction, has to be celebrated and embraced so that the minority is duped into thinking that communism was their own idea and something that they collectively want. Perhaps the best way to understand the Leninist principle of diversity is to hear directly from a Soviet refugee. So I'm going to quote from the Harvard Refugee Interview Project, circa 1950. And this is a Belarusian, a white Russian. He says, quote, "You know the official slogan, national in form, socialist in content. This simply means that, for example, an opera play may be given in the White Russian language, and the actors can wear White Russian costumes, but they can present only Bolshevik ideas. There is no real independence for nationalities. It is true we have our own White Russian Supreme Soviet, but it is subordinate to Moscow. In the early years after the revolution, there were many nationalities in White Russia who wanted to preserve White Russian culture, but they were all sent away to jail." That was a classic and terrific explanation of what is going on. So minority identity groups are being gutted of their real culture till nothing is left but a superficial costume stuffed with the Bolshevik party line. Because diversity refers strictly to minority socialist construction, this means that the identity group will not be allowed to exist if it is anti-socialist. I will quickly add that out in Washington State, via Senate Bill 5044, it was put into law that all independently elected school board members, school administrators, school teachers, and staff all have to be indoctrinated with cultural competency, diversity, equity, and inclusion standards. This is required for teacher certification or renewing their certificates. The standards require, quote, "shifting from a focus on the individual to a focus on the collective we." And it gets worse from there, but essentially this requires all adults in the educational system to be practicing communists. So to summarize the main takeaways from this deprogramming lesson, diversity strictly means unity of socialist content, and by embracing diversity, this is the fastest and most guaranteed route to communism.